Morning and welcome to Gardening 36569. And Claire's been out planting daffodils, and here's what she's been up to. These are some daffodils that we've taken from another area where something's going on, and we're just replanting them here. All we're doing is just jug out some grass, put the daffodils in. We're putting quite a number in. You can put more than that, even than that if you want to. And we're just going to cover them back up, and hopefully we'll see them in the early spring. Simple as. And then over the grass, and you can just push it in. It is quite dry at the moment though as well. And when you're finished, it hardly looks like you've been there. And that's the area where the daffodils were. You can see why we had to move them. Now I've already been out a while and I've been preparing this compost. All I'm trying to do is to make some space, but that's what I've got so far. And this really is absolute gold to a gardener. Your own made compost from your rubbish that now is such an vital ingredient for your gardening for the following years. I'm taking it from here and it's pretty well rotted, I've got to be honest. It's some of the best compost I've ever made. But what I am just doing for belt and braces is just using a sieve so that I know that any things that shouldn't be going through there I can collect. And I mean sort of sticks that haven't rotted enough this year, and also I use this area for growing potatoes, so I've got quite a lot of potatoes there. Well, not a lot, but they would grow into potatoes next year. And also I've got some real nasty stuff. These are tea bag outers from when they used to use plastic. Got some stones in there and just little pieces of plastic. I'll have to obviously discard that stuff, it's no good, I can't use it for anything. And any compost worms that I'm finding, they just go back into my wormery. They're not going to waste. Growing great veg gives me immense pleasure, but making this gives me very nearly as much pleasure, because I know next year this will make me great veg again, and that's how it's done, and it costs nothing. My budget for fertiliser each year is zero. I don't spend any money on fertiliser whatsoever. It all comes from our property. Second barrow load now, and what I have got is something you don't see very often, an empty compost bin. So what I'm going to do, start filling it up. And on the very first layer we've got some garden waste and some kitchen waste, and then on top of that, anything that wouldn't go through the sieve gets recycled for next year's compost. So I'll put that in now, and that now becomes my layer of browns. I have got some left, and I'll put that in tomorrow when I start turning this compost bin, weather permitting. And that really is good compost. Best I've ever made, or definitely as good as the best I've ever made. Sad news to report, some of our wild ducks have flown off. There's 2 there at the moment, but they're that size now that they will fly away and leave us, but hopefully come back in the future. Finished a little bit earlier now. I'm going in because myself and Claire are off to see Mason Hill, Britain's hottest new rock band. Ooh, looking forward to that one. Mason Hill were absolutely awesome. But this isn't a new wave of classic rock channel, it's a gardening channel. So let's get back to the gardening. This time of the year, a lot of the tomatoes are coming towards the end. So what I do is strip all of the bottom leaves right off completely and just leave the tomatoes on. Give them the best chance to ripen naturally. You need to leave a few of the top leaves though, just for this photosynthesis. Any leaves that are sort of dying off, cut them off. You don't want them, just green leaves. And any waste, of course, into the compost heap. And I'm starting another bucket of Christmas potatoes. Remember, if you're doing this, Plant them with the chits up, that's the way they'll grow the best. And the Christmas potatoes that I sowed last week are showing very early signs of growth, which is absolutely superb. I'd expect to see them up in about a week. It does slow down as the weather gets cooler overnight. Now it's been really windy overnight, as you can probably hear. And what we got is what's called windfall apples. Only one, okay, but if that's been picked up the same day it's dropped, it's perfectly edible, and I think it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So that's going to be in my butty box for tomorrow. Fresh apples. Now this is chicken manure. I'm going to put some in the compost. Now you don't have to put chicken manure in. In fact, you don't have to put any animal manure in. But we've got it. It's a waste product to us, and it is actually really good in your compost. So definitely going to be using it. Now Claire uses wood chip for her bedding, and this is great because that supplies carbons, whereas the actual poo itself supplies the nitrogen. So it's a bit of a 2 for 1. Just chuck it in. Okay, oh, that's layered now. And what I mean by layered is I've completely covered up the layer below. You don't have to do that, it's just something I do. The sunflowers are lovely, but unfortunately we've had a bit of damage overnight. Oh dear. One of the sunflowers is down. Now from disaster, hopefully something good. I cut them down, brought them in the house, put them in a vase. Excuse the flower arranging, that's something nice. And again, nothing goes to waste.
Not in this house!
And what happens to the other bits? Well, that's an absolute no-brainer. Into the compost. Now everybody wants great flowers and veg in their gardens. I think most of you know that it actually comes from this. Great compost, horse muck, just to fertilise the soil naturally. Doesn't that look just absolutely wonderful? So in my opinion, everybody wants this. People don't normally want is this. And why? I'll destroy a few myths. Takes up too much space. I'll come back to that one in a minute. It smells. Now compost done right is absolutely odourless. You could have this next to your patio, it still wouldn't smell. And the reason why I say you haven't got enough room, I'm going to show you a way of composting where you wouldn't need much room at all. One of these little wormery, and then in that I can make about every week and a half I can make one of these apples. So it takes about 3 weeks to fill one of these big drugs up, but the actual process itself takes about 6 weeks, so it's really quite quick. And it makes the best compost that money can't buy. It's called worm compost, and it's absolutely superb. Now what I'll do in the comments is put the name of the wormery that I bought. This is a Worm City one. I totally recommend it. There are other ones out there. This setup was about £70, which is not cheap, but you'd pay nearly that for a conventional compost bin. Now this will churn out this little thing here as much as one of those big ones each year in that little space. What a saving. Now I am an incredibly busy person, so during the daytime I am a quality systems coordinator, and in the evenings I am a martial arts instructor, and on the weekend I'm a 100% gardener. And if you don't believe me, here's my CV. And that concludes this week's Gardening 365 69. Join me next time for Gardening 365 70. Thank you ever so much for watching. Please invite your friends to our Facebook site. Please head along to our YouTube site and subscribe. It's really appreciated. Bye. See you next time.
Okay.